What's going on, people? I am B-Dobbins, FTW, and today I wanted to talk about what I consider one of the most important mechanics in gaming right now that does not get nearly as much love as it deserves, and we are all worse off for it, and that is Forge mode. And admittedly, part of the reason it doesn't get as much love as it deserves is that 343 and Microsoft are not utilizing the full potential of this game mode, and we're going to talk about how best to remedy that problem and make sure that Forge gets the love it so desperately needs. Forge mode is the most effective tool available on the consoles for community-generated content. In fact, when I think about it, excluding Minecraft, it might be like the only tool on consoles available for community-generated content, which is a fucking tragedy, because community-generated content is the best solution to the biggest problem facing AAA gaming today, which is a content crisis, okay? Lack of content has been a major complaint among gamers for a number of high-profile games, including Halo 5 at launch, Destiny obviously, Star Wars Battlefront, Call of Duty Advanced Warfare, remember when vanilla shipped without zombies, Evolve, Titanfall, the list goes on. And I've spent a lot of time trying to dissect what's causing this problem, this content crisis, and based on my research, the primary problem is that content today is much more expensive to develop than it ever has been in the history of gaming, and the result is that developers are often unable to produce as much content as we'd like because it's not in the budget. They can't afford to put that much out. Community-generated content, Forge mode, is the answer to this problem, because if you give them the tools, players will build your game for you, for free, and even better, they'll thank you for the opportunity. People love building things. People love to use their creativity to make something real that other people can witness. Having other people see something you've made and appreciate it, that's a very gratifying experience that every human being should get to have at least once in their lives. And we know this. That's why things like Legos were and still are so fucking popular. That's why Minecraft is so popular. That's why Forge itself has been such a success on Halo. Now, at first glance, when you look at how popular a game like Minecraft is, when you look at how popular modding is on games like Skyrim and GTA, and when you look at the way it extends the lifespans of games and increases audience retention at no cost to the developer, you have to wonder, why is there only one major title on the market right now that includes a content creation game mode? The unfortunate reality is that game publishers are opposed to community-generated content for the same reason they wiped out community modding. It hurts DLC sales. When you have the community generating essentially unlimited amounts of content for free, there's that much less incentive for players to spend money on developer DLC, right? Because why would you spend $15 on 4 new maps once every couple months when there's already dozens and dozens of new maps being put out every day for free? It would take a fat shit on DLC sales, especially because everybody hates having to pay for DLC anyways, and because of that, it's going to require a dramatic change in consumer demands to convince publishers that it's necessary to include community-generated content in their games. Now, Halo 5 is actually in a very unique position to bring about the kind of change I'm talking about for two reasons. The first is that all their DLC is free anyways, so all the extra Forge content wouldn't be hurting DLC sales, because they aren't selling DLC in the first place. It would just mean that there's that much more free content, that much more reason for people to keep playing Halo. Secondly, the other big reason publishers aren't friendly to community-generated content is that it interferes with their planned obsolescence cycles, okay? For instance, if you are continually getting new player-made zombies and multiplayer maps on Black Ops 3 for free, you might say, I'm having fun with all this content here on Black Ops 3. I don't need to drop $60 on Call of Duty Ghosts 2 next year, right? Maybe you wait longer to buy the next COD. Maybe you're not, re-upping every year on COD. You're only re-upping every 2 years, every 3 years. Community-generated content would sort of throw a wrench in their conveyor belt of content that they want you to keep buying. So there may be some concern that community content on Halo 5 could hurt Halo 6 sales down the road. If you have so much free content on Halo 5, well, there's less incentive to buy the new game for $60, right? But here's the key thing to understand. Halo is in the advantageous position of being tied to the Xbox. Microsoft owns Halo, 343 is just a division of Microsoft, right? A very strong argument could be made that it's worth the risk of losing out on some Halo 6 sales if it means selling more Xboxes. Even if some people stay on Halo 5 after 6 comes out for the Forge stuff, they're still on the Xbox, they're still playing the Xbox. And that's important because we know that one of the primary considerations customers make when choosing what console to buy is, hey, what console are most of my friends playing? Halo is Microsoft's strongest competitive advantage in the console war with PS4, okay? The hardware and software capabilities are a wash. They're about even, which was essentially the same story back on the 360 and PS3. But what was it that allowed the 360 to win that generation? Halo, period. And it can do it again, or at the very least it can make up a lot of the ground that Xbox has lost to PS4, and I do believe that to some extent Microsoft knows this, and that's why they have not only kept Forge around, but really put it on steroids this year with Halo 5, adding a wide range of really cool features. You can tell they really invested some time and resources into this game mode, which wouldn't make sense if you were worried about Forge interfering with your ability to sell other Halo shit. I also think this is a big part of the reason that all the Halo 5 DLC is free, because plenty of games have rec pack style microtransactions and still charge for their DLC. But fracturing the player base with DLC really damages a game's quality over time. It means longer matchmaking times for everyone. It means vanilla players, people who just bought the game, are going to have a shit multiplayer experience, and it means eventually everyone who bought all the DLC has to uninstall it just to find a match, and those negative consequences would be especially pronounced considering that Halo 5 did not sell that well following the MCC debacle. People's overall Halo 5 experience would be tainted, and Microsoft really doesn't want that because they want the Halo 5 experience to be a major selling point for the Xbox One. They want everyone playing Halo 5 to have a jolly fucking time, so that others are more easily encouraged to seek out the Halo 5 experience, only available on Xbox One. They are looking at the bigger picture in a way that only a company using a game to move consoles can. And if for some reason they aren't looking at it that way, they are really fucking stupid. But I guess these are the people behind Kinect after all, so who knows. Either way, Microsoft, and subsequently 343, I suspect would be much more receptive to community demands and pressure regarding Halo, just because of the fact that investments in Halo see much higher returns than other games, because Halo sells Xboxes. So at this point, Microsoft and the Halo community want the same thing, and that is to make Halo great again, because they want to sell Xboxes and we want a better game. And Forge is the best way to accomplish both these goals. Imagine a game with unlimited amounts of content, new maps and new game modes every week. Imagine a game that for $60 gave you 10 times the replay value, 10 times the amount of content as any of its $110 competitors. And imagine how unique that content would be. Things like Riftball, Infection, Cops and Robbers. If you'll recall the MCC Action Sack, things like Paintball, Dodgeball, Team Sumo, these all started out as custom game variants that were added into matchmaking and everybody loved them. Because of how unique Halo's weapons and vehicles are, and with the ability to change gravity and mold terrain to fit the game modes, there is an infinite amount of different game modes to be played and an infinite amount of replayability, so long as there is a large enough group of content creators to keep exploring those possibilities. And 343 alone cannot bear that burden because Microsoft cannot afford that many developers. But Forgers will do it for free, and they'll have fun doing it. An infinite amount of diverse content. That's why Minecraft is so popular. There's always something new to do. Okay? And Halo can accomplish that same level of appeal, but with better graphics, physics, and combat. But in order to do that, 343 has to fully utilize this tool, and so far they have failed miserably to do that. And I want to find some sinister, greedy motive for it, but I honestly cannot see what they possibly have to gain from their lack of proper support for Forge mode. The only rational explanation I can see is sheer incompetence. They're sitting on a goddamn gold mine, but have their heads so far up each other's asses that they can't see it. Why develop the game mode in the first place if you're just gonna let it rot without a file browser? It'd be like if Apple had spent all that time making the iWatch, and then they forgot to attach a goddamn wristband so nobody could even wear the thing. The watch still operates without a wristband, but if you can't wear it, what's the fucking point? Now, they've added weather effects, and that's cool, but they need to go a lot farther. There are a number of important additions and or changes that Forge needs in order to fully realize its potential, solve the content crisis, win the console war, and make Halo great again. And that starts with what I already mentioned, the goddamn file browser. Now, what many of you might not know is that 343 has in fact added very recently a file browser to Halo Waypoint. I'll link it in the description. It's a big step in the right direction, but it's still not enough. Without an in-game file browser, the vast majority of Forge content is never going to be seen or played by anyone, because you have to jump through so many hoops at that point to connect Forge content with players. And that's the main reason this game mode hasn't gotten the love it deserves. Because until very, very recently, they didn't even have the file browser on the website. Under the current system, in-game, you have to know someone's gamer tag to download a file they've made. What this means is that the only people getting to play Forge content are the guys who take the time to go on Waypoint or Forge Hub, the Halo subreddit, YouTube, whatever, and actively seek out cool Forge stuff. But this system is bunked for a couple reasons. First is that most Halo players don't even realize this is an option, right? You gotta think of your average Joe gamer. He doesn't know about Forge Hub or Waypoint, and even if they did, when you have to go through all that effort to find Forge content, that turns away a lot of players who don't want to jump through all these hoops every time they want to play new Forge content. You know, it's a Friday night and you're hanging out with your friends playing Halo, you're much less likely to say, hey, let's all play custom games, when you know that that means one of you has to get on your computer and spend 15 minutes searching for shit, and you might not even find something you like. And the bigger problem is that even if you do jump through the hoops, even if you do put in the effort to locate cool Forge stuff, you're still inevitably going to miss out on most of what's out there, because a lot of the coolest Forge creations, maps, game modes, or what have you aren't going to make it to the top of Waypoint's file browser, because they have to be bookmarked a whole bunch to make it there in the first place, which means they basically need to be really popular before they get found on Waypoint. There is no system to facilitate fresh Forge content that isn't aggressively promoted by its creator. And a lot of the great Forge content out there is, you know, hidden away in some obscure YouTube video with less than 1,000 views. I mean, some of the best Forge content I've seen, you know, things like freaking Star Wars pod racing, okay? Where they literally had like objects, fucking pod race in them, okay? Little hover things. They like built their own vehicles. I can't even go back and find it later because it was some random post on Reddit or it was some YouTube video I stumbled across and the title was in a foreign language. Under the current system, the only forged content that's going to see the light of the day is the content that is promoted by its creators aggressively. That means creating accounts on various forums, making YouTube videos, spamming links to the shit in various places. It's a lot of effort. But even if you do all that stuff, your content will still inevitably be buried by the internet eventually. I mean, you can only keep your post on the front page of whatever forums for so long. Let's be honest, unless you already had a decent subscriber base built up, like at least 10k subs, your YouTube video isn't going anywhere. So it takes a whole lot of effort to get your content out there. And it's not like there's a lot of overlap between your forge skills and your online marketing skills. You could be a great forger and not know shit about getting your content in front of people's eyes. And frankly, many forgers aren't even going to promote their shit at all, either because they don't really know how, or they just aren't motivated enough to put in all that extra work, and who can blame them? Building maps is fun, whoring them out on the internet isn't. I shudder to think about how much great forged content we'll never see just because it got buried on the internet, or it never even got put on the internet, you know? And when you know that probably nobody is ever going to play whatever you're creating, it sucks some of the fun out of forging itself. There's that much less incentive to finish your project, to put the time in to make your project as perfect as it can be. There's that much less incentive to build anything at all, to even start your project. I shudder to think how much great forged content we're missing out on because it never even got created or finished. It's just out there sitting in people's heads. With a convenient file browser built into the game, every forger just has to give their content a title and some tags, a description for what it is, and just put it out there. You have a search system where players can type in what they're looking for, do a search just like on YouTube, you know, racetrack, competitive double maps, BTB maps, silly game modes, or whatever. You have some sort of voting system where you can like or upvote a map. And then players can sort through by most played, highest rated of all time, of this year, of this month, or of today. And that's important so that new files are continually getting attention and you don't just have like the top dozen files snowballing to the point that they're all anyone sees, that they just sort of stay at the top indefinitely. And you can sort between all players or just friends. It streamlines the process and ensures that new forge content, fresh forge content that hasn't necessarily been promoted by its creator still has a somewhat fair shot at getting some of the attention it needs to actually get popular and be viewed by the wider Halo audience. And being able to sort to just friends is also important because that's how you get your file its initial attention, right? To help build its way up high enough to where someone's actually going to come across in the file browser, either in-game or on Waypoint. And it's much easier to, send a message to your friends and promote your work than it is going out on the internet with strangers. It would remove all the red tape, streamline the process easily, connect players with forged content. Forgers don't have to do shit to get their content out there. Maybe just encourage their friends to try it out and get it started in the file browser. And anytime you and your friends playing it, it's Friday, you're high as fuck, you can just go browse for cool files if you want something new, sort to best of today. Maybe they could have like a rising or trending tab, like stuff that's not super popular yet, but it looks like it's getting popular. You don't have to create a Waypoint account and try to remember your goddamn Microsoft password. If you're looking for something specific, you type it in, you check it, you try it out, wacky shit, everybody's laughing, having a good time, you find something you like, check out more from that creator, you like it all. And suddenly there's an unlimited amount of content on this game. Suddenly the game is worth 10 times what you paid for it. And in fact, I'd say take it a bit farther. Turn the file browser into a full-on server browser, because one of the other problems I think with Forge stuff is that you have to have enough of your friends with you to really play most of it, whether it's a custom game or whatever. You can't just go out there by yourself, or even with one other friend and get the most out of the Forge content. You need a group. But if you turn it into a server browser, ideally hosted on the Xbox of the forger who made said content. If that's not possible, do something like what you got with Battlefield. Let forgers rent out servers, host their content on it. The host forger can determine some of the server settings, depending on what the creation is. I mean, match and round times, how many players on a team or what have you. Sometimes might be kind of difficult depending on the game mode or what you're trying to do, but if the forger's there hosting and he has control, he can kind of direct things and restart or rearrange whatever, whenever, and then people can just join and play with other strangers, and this will open up the Forge experience to a lot more people a lot more often, because again, it's just about removing hoops that you have to jump through, removing red tape to enjoy Forge, right? And a big hoop for me in the past has certainly been having to have 5 friends with me, or sending messages to all recent friends and players to join you on Forge content and hoping none of them are total douchebags. And then we also need a public social multiplayer playlist in regular matchmaking where wacky Forge stuff is added regularly, like MCC Action Sack, which was like the most popular playlist. It saved that game, or saved it for a little while anyways. Awkward. Bring in Halo 5 Action Sack and then just keep adding Forge stuff to it as often as possible. Go look at what's getting the most downloads on the file browser, what the most popular Forge stuff is, and if it's possible, add it to the Action Sack matchmaking playlist. Look at how popular Super Fiesta has been, right? People like wacky. Halo is at its best, in my opinion, when it's being fucking wacky and innovative and new and unique and original and imaginative and whoa, I've never done this before. Now, the file browser is the most important missing feature, but there are some other meaningful additions that I think would add a lot to the Forge experience and make Halo fucking great again. Warzone maps. Like, what the fuck? Why don't we already have these? First of all, one of the big complaints with a lot of casual Forgers is that, you know, the current Forge game mode, it only has one starting map available, and the starting map is just super empty and blank, and they kind of wish they had something similar to what you had in Halo Reach, where you have sort of some terrain already built on it. You know, Forge World had like mountains and cliffs and islands and stuff where you could kind of play around with different settings, and not that that's super important, but it's something a lot of people want. It makes your maps look a little bit more immersive. It gives you something to work off of, something to sort of build on top of, build around, instead of just having to start from scratch, and it's kind of awkward, and you know. But that's not the important thing. The important thing is just being able to forge Warzone maps, period. You know, and again, it just feels like sheer incompetence on 343's part that this isn't already a thing, because Warzone is where they make their money, right? It's the rec packs. It's not like you're buying rec packs for Arena. You know, let us load the default Warzone maps in Forge, and this could open up a lot of cool opportunities. One of the big complaints with Warzone is that the buildings are all too similar, right? They copy and paste the various buildings and bases from map to map. The core rooms are always identical. Open it up to Forgers. Let them play with it a little bit. Let them add their own special bases or unique pathways or whatever, and go in and maybe customize the interior layout of the core rooms. And most importantly, let them choose where the AI bosses spawn and when they spawn. And just include those as an option in custom games. I'm sure there'd be a number of interesting custom game modes that could be played on those maps. I always thought a 16v16 CTF match on a Warzone map would be super fun. And these maps probably wouldn't be added into public matchmaking just because it'd be hard to make them different enough from the maps that are already in there. You know, it'd be like an array variant basically, so it'd be kind of awkward in public matchmaking. But I think there's a ton of potential for really, really fun custom games on the shit. And maybe if a map is different enough, it gets added into matchmaking or whatever. And then the other thing I think could be huge is firefight, right? And maybe I'm stretching what is possible for 343 at this point. You know, I don't know how hard this would be to do, but if you could use Forge to customize Warzone maps to actually cater to the firefight game mode, and you know, build sick ass bases with mounted turrets and design some traps maybe you could activate or something, and all kinds of cool little stuff. You know, you build some gravity jumps that have the explosive barrel coil things spawn next to them, and you push the coil into the gravity lift and it shoots it, and you're like firing your gravity coil barrels at the enemy AI and fucking them up. And then the really sick and perhaps unrealistic part would be if you could customize each wave of enemies. That would be sick as fuck. You'd have Forgers customizing these very specific kinds of challenges. You know, this round is all hunters and grunts with fuel rod cannons, and your base is this 10-story high tower, and they're gonna rush up the stairs, and you can drop grenades down this little hatch on the roof on them, and as they come up, you restock your ammo at a little station at the top of the building. You got a neat little mounted turret on the roof, and you're spraying down the enemy dropships, and they bring bad guys in. You know, the possibilities are just limitless, and so you apply the same rec rules to customs as matchmaking. You pull from the same pool of recs you like you do with Warzone, MP, and Firefight now, and with the addition of Forge Customs, you'd have people playing a fuckload more Warzone content and more Warzone playtime, which means more rec packs used, which in the long run means more rec packs sold, which is 343's primary source of income behind selling the actual game. So I don't know why they wouldn't do that. I don't know why the fuck they haven't done it already. And lastly, while researching this video, I ran across another very concerning obstacle preventing Forge from being the best game mode it can be, and that is the community Cartographers, which are the people who decide what Forge content makes it into matchmaking, right? They're members of the Halo community who have the special privilege of getting to decide if the Forge map you built is good enough to be played by the masses. Now, what was really surprising to me is that these guys aren't actually developers. They aren't professionals in the traditional sense, and their experience with level design is limited at best, non-existent at worst. And now basically, in their infinite wisdom, 343 selected a handful of these community cartographers back during Halo 4, and they were just sort of plucked out of the community of forgers. And most forgers today agree that the cartographers who were selected aren't actually that good at making maps. In fact, the criteria for becoming a cartographer remains unclear to me. The cartographer system was a really stupid-ass plan, and another unfortunate consequence of the incompetence plaguing 343 management, because now the system has devolved into rampant nepotism, okay? There is a consensus within the Forge community that to get one of your Forge creations into matchmaking, you have to kiss ass and suck up to these community cartographers, who are, again, just average Joe players like you and me. And there is a consensus that the only Forge maps getting chosen for matchmaking come from people who are close friends with the community cartographers, and it's become a huge controversy within the Forge community. Most Halo players probably haven't heard much about it just because the Forge community is very small, and on the face of it, this doesn't affect the average player, right? This is primarily about Forgers feeling like their work isn't getting a fair shot, but really this does affect every Halo player because This means we aren't getting the best possible selection of forge maps and matchmaking. You know, just because you're related to a king doesn't mean you're going to be a good king yourself, right? That's why we got rid of that system. Sorry, Jeb. Just because you're friends with some random fuck community cartographer doesn't mean you make good maps. Furthermore, this discourages even the most hardcore forgers still on Halo from forging new content, and that sucks ass because that's where a lot of the best forge work is going to come from, is the hardcore guys who've been doing it for so long. So that's a huge tragedy that we're missing out on a bunch of great forge content just because these community cartographers are incompetent douchebags. The selection process for what makes it into matchmaking should be much more democratic than a handful of unelected randoms making shitty decisions behind closed doors. And this is another reason we need the file browser, okay? It'd be a great way to sort of beta what Forge content is the most enjoyable. You see what Forge creations are getting the most playtimes and file downloads, and you go from there, and maybe you have the CCs contribute, make suggestions, maybe they decide, hey, everyone likes this map, but it's too silly for legit matchmaking or whatever. But the Forge to matchmaking process in general needs to be democratized, and so does the community cartographer selection system. And really, let's get down to brass tacks here. This wouldn't even be a controversy if it wasn't for this one fucking guy, okay? Psycho Duck. The community cartographer system is vulnerable to abuse, and that abuse is not limited to simply one cartographer, but there's only one guy who really abused it to the point that it is a serious problem and that it blew up into this controversy, which they're now referring to as ForgeGate. And if it wasn't for this one guy, I don't even think people would be that up in arms about it, and that's Psycho Duck, okay? Who has let this little bit of power go to his head and who now stands accused of a wide variety of shady behavior that essentially revolves around using his power as matchmaking gatekeeper to get people to suck his dick. When forgers I've talked to or read posts from or seen videos from, when they talk about this problem, they don't talk about the inherent structural flaws in the CC system. They primarily talk about what a piece of shit this one Psycho Duck guy is, and in fact I'll link a video that goes over some of his shenanigans. Now 343 has formally responded to this controversy on Reddit, and they basically said, hey, we hear you, we're looking at changes to the way CCs are selected. Which is fine and dandy, but then the thread gets locked because too many people are expressing their distaste with this Psycho Duck guy, and Fenris447, who is the biggest shill bitch of a forum moderator I have ever encountered. Alright, this guy is auditioning to get hired by 343, and 343 already has hired Reddit moderators in the past. He locks the thread because he doesn't want poor little Psycho Duck to get bullied. And I just want to make the point, when you put someone in a position of power, you cannot shield them from criticism just because you don't want to hurt their feelings. Because 343 doesn't mention the guy either. They don't mention a process to remove CCs, and it's kind of like avoiding the elephant in the room, because again, based on everything I've read, watched, the few people I've talked to about this controversy wouldn't even be a controversy if it wasn't for this one guy, okay? And I know I don't like this guy, because he had this little smarmy response to the people talking shit to him, and the response just reeked of cunt, and I hate it when cunts get power. Now, should 343 make the necessary additions and reforms that Forge so desperately needs, it will give Halo a competitive advantage that no other shooter on the market has, which in turn will give Xbox a super competitive advantage. Unlimited content. When you're trying to get consumers to buy your product over your competitors, what do you have to do? You have to offer something that your competitors don't have. You have to draw a contrast with your competition. No other shooter has Forge. No other shooter has the potential for unlimited content in the way Halo 5 does. And unlimited content is a very powerful advantage because it's a very simple way to say, hey, we will offer you more content for your money than our competitors. That's a very easy argument for consumers to understand, especially during a time in the industry when many gamers are feeling very let down with the amount of content they are getting in their games. Again, it's been the #1 complaint with many AAA popular shooters. It's a hell of a contrast to be drawn. Unlimited content is a very persuasive argument. What's great about that is that if Forge is successful in peeling off market share from Halo's competitors using this mechanic, its competitors will be forced to respond in kind. It will put immense pressure on other games to compete with this feature. That means other games start implementing their own map creators, or even better, mod tools like you have with Skyrim, or at the very least allowing modding to exist like it did on every game back in the day. It's kind of like with wave defense, right? Back in 2007, you had one game, Gears of War, bring in wave defense. It was horde mode. It was a huge success. In the time since, you see almost every other shooter come out with its version of wave defense. Zombies, firefight, Battlefront missions. And in fact, Black Ops 3 recently announced it had begun closed alpha testing for mod tools on the PC, which shows you this is all within the realm of possibility. And it's not going to happen instantly, it's gradual, but it all begins with Halo 5 Forge, and it can only truly work if 343 takes the necessary steps to fully utilize the power of Forge mode. And if they do, then in the long run, they can end the content crisis once and for all, saving gamers worldwide from low quality games. They can save the Xbox One. And best of all, they can make Halo great again. The For the Win query of the day is, what is some custom content you would like to see built in Halo 5? For me personally, I want fucking Rocket League put in this game, okay? Kind of like Rocket Hog Race from Reach, except you got a big ass ball on Blood Gulch and you can hit it with the car or shoot it with the rockets, and you shoot the other motherfucking cars with rockets, and you score by hitting the ball into one of the bases on either side, right? They're kind of like little basketball hoops. That's what I want. I want Rocket League and Halo, okay? Thanks for watching. This is B Dobbins, FTW, signing out.